So good morning, everyone. We have a fantastic panel lined up for us today. A very quick introduction from myself. I'm Daryl D'Cruz and I'm the founder of Hexdon. We help marketing leaders to get more customers and grow their value through unlocking data and insights and essentially the customer value exchange as well. I've got about 18 years working at the intersection of customers and data and insight for brands like Samsung and Westfield and EasyJet and the NHS as well. I also support the DMA, the Data and Marketing Association. I do a bit of judging for them for the awards, and I'm also on the Value of Data Committee. So if any of you are interested in understanding more about the DMA and want to be a part of it in some way, shape or form, please do come and find me out there, but I can have a chat with you. Just a little bit of information about what we're doing and how we're supporting the industry, the marketing and data industry as well. What else is there to say? So just to reiterate the housekeeping side of things, keep an eye on your personalized agenda, and the Inspire team will be happy to help you to navigate from room to room as well. But let's kick off the panel, shall we? So purpose-driven marketing, that's what we're here to talk about today. There's a heightened demand for brands to demonstrate the social, economic, and environmental responsibility. As a result, we've seen many brands embed purpose into their marketing efforts, their marketing and their communications. And purpose is being used as a way to attract and retain customers and employees as well. But really, the question is, have brands gone too far? And do customers see through these well-meaning efforts? Has purpose-driven marketing become saturated? Those are the kind of the questions we're going to explore. So I think we should start with some introductions. If we could start with your name, a little bit about your role, and maybe a brand that's doing some really cool things in this space to kick us off.
Definitely
Briony.
me to go first.
Yes, please.
Morning, everyone. I'm Briony. I work for a huge company that none of you will have heard of called Olam Food Ingredients, OFI. But probably you drank our coffee or our nuts was in the boxes of cereal that you ate. And if you have a chocolate bar, it will be our cocoa at the break time. So I've been at the company for about 12 years and joined having worked 7 years in rainforest NGOs before I joined. So I think I joined as an activist, let's say, going to join the dark side of a big agricultural company to see how I could influence. So this is a topic that's very close to my heart. I was thinking about sort of brands who are out there. So we're a B2B as an organisation, but in terms of brands that are out there that I admire from a purpose point of view and trying not to think of the cliches that everybody will already know. So I really like BAM clothing. I don't know if anybody owns a BAM garment, but it's a bamboo raw material. 79% of their raw material is renewable. So if you compare that to cotton or something, it's natural and it's biodegradable, which I think is incredibly cool. They're kind of really into finding new materials. So they have sort of also using seaweed and other fungi-eating plastics and stuff like that. So I think they're a very cool brand. They sent a free pair of socks recently. We might talk about E.ON in a minute. I'm looking to trigger Scott. We've been winding Scott up in our pre-calls. And I recently bought another one of their garments. They reminded me what a super cool organisation they are. So anybody who doesn't know about BAM clothing, one final thing I'm going to say, bamboo is the fastest growing crop in the world and it locks up 5% more carbon than trees do. So 5 times more carbon than trees. So highly recommend them.
Interesting. Scott?
Yeah, so I'm Scott and it's great to be here this morning. I try and make sure that our owned, earned and paid marketing efforts all pull in the same direction. So for E.ON as a brand, obviously in a sector that recent years has been through lots of change. I've been in the business for just over sort of 10 years or so now. When I joined, it was all about big fossil fueled power stations. We sold them off, got rid of them. It was then about building big wind farms. The next stage for us is about trying to get what we call energy solutions into all of our homes and into more businesses, so solar panels, batteries. So the shift for us as a brand is how do you move from a commodity space, we're famous as a supplier, right? In a sector where you have to buy our product, but you don't necessarily want to. So you just have to be slightly better than the next person, right? We're moving into a world whereby these products, whilst they can add real benefit to your life or more money in your pocket, it is a choice. So that's new for us. We're having to create desire around our products in a way we've not had to before. So that brand shift is huge for us. And as we've talked about, I think we've got some good experience of, and you go back a number of years of the risks around overclaiming, greenwashing, going back a while. As has been mentioned, you can have sort of, well-intentioned sales promotions, within a business. If it's not quite right, if it's not in tune with your consumers, it can lead to a big reputational challenge. So I think for me, a couple of the brands that are doing really well are, and really jealous of, I guess those brands that don't have to maybe make the same balance that a big multinational has to do. But speaking personally, I think there's a clothing brand, Don't Stab Your Future, which is Idris Elba's clothing line. They do some amazing stuff. It's essentially a knife crime charity with clothing attached, and I think similar to, say, a Patagonia. It's a really interesting way to get people actually talking about important products. So create something desirable, by sort of by link, you then talk about it. But actually, we'll get into it. I actually still think Unilever's still the North Star around purpose for what they've tried to do with it, which we'll talk about in a bit. So nice to be here this morning.
Over to you, Molly.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Dobson. I lead the Currys business organization at Currys. Been there for just over a year, actually, this week. Prior to that, spent the last 8 years working for Amazon across Europe, which is probably not a brand that a lot of people associate with purpose and purpose-driven communications. And I actually think this is one of the first panels I've been on where you have multiple points of view on B2B and B2C. So worked on both sides of that equation across my retail career. I think it's really interesting talking about purpose and purpose-driven marketing and communications when you're thinking about basic tech product and organizations that, again, aren't typically known for connecting with customers in that sort of way. And when we talked about brands that resonated with us, I like a lot of the cliche brands still because I think it's great if you can operate at scale, you can be highly recognizable and still not have lost that sense of purpose. So one brand that I've liked for years is Tom's. So the shoes, the alpargatas. I'm married to an Argentinian, so we have more alpargatas in our house than I can possibly count, but I like the brand. And there are many reasons why. When that brand was founded, they set out with a mission thinking about, people, planet, and purpose. And it has never felt like an afterthought for Tom's. It's always been the thought in terms of how they've created and how they've grown their brand. And they're very explicit about it as well. And I think something that is great about how they communicate their purpose, their reason for being, is how clearly you can connect it to the customer choice. So Tom says things like, we make choices about what we wear. Great, we all do this. We all did this today. We made choices about what we wear. So I have responsibility, I have ownership of my decision there. And Tom says we choose to wear our impact on our feet. And as a consumer, you can see, yeah, I get it. I make choices about the footwear that I buy. I can make a choice to buy this brand, and I can have impact because of the choice I make. So I think it's really nice when brands can have that sense of purpose, be very articulate about what that purpose is and what they stand for, and then directly connect that to a consumer behavior. Because then as a customer of the brand, you feel as if you're kind of living part of the brand and you're doing something and not just talking about doing something. So I like some of the big cliche brands as well. And this one in particular, just because I think it's been nice how they've structured their reason for being and more importantly, communicated that throughout the whole of their growth journey.
Interesting. I'd like to kick off with our first question. What does purpose-driven marketing mean to your brand? Briony, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So from our organisation point of view, we have debates about where purpose and sustainability interact. So our corporate purpose is to be the change for good food and a healthy future. And for us, when we think about that, if we don't look after, from a purpose-driven point of view, the farmers that pick our coffee or grow our cocoa or our nuts, we won't have a business in the first place. So for us, the kind of the purpose and sustainability piece of our business strategy are completely interwoven. Equally, environmental ecosystems and climate change. We're already seeing areas where we planted coffee less than 15 years ago, which are becoming non-viable from a climate change point of view. So for us, we're looking 15, 20 years, 30 years out in terms of yield and climate change and the impact. So for us, this isn't think of a lovely consumer idea, force people to buy something they don't want and wrap a nice story around it. It's a business continuity threat for us to be sustainably and purpose-driven. And again, partly because we don't have brands, but if I think about our corporation as a brand, we couldn't not be purpose-driven with our stakeholders. So if I look at, we're imminently going for an IPO. It was supposed to happen a year ago, but sadly didn't because of events in Europe. The ESG criteria that we went through this time last year, every single claim, every single word on a document checked by lawyers. So we have stakeholders for whom this is very important, including our customers who are all the big, large global food manufacturers and retailers. So we look to do a purpose match. We look to see what their purpose is, and we find a very common ground between us and our customers. So I think for us, purpose is absolutely intrinsic to what we do. We're now in our 4th iteration of purpose, and I've been at the company, for, as I said, for 12 years. And so I've driven the company, something I've said also passionate for me, I've driven us through 4 iterations of purpose. Few top tips on that for 4th time around, which I'm now calling Purpose 2.0, is around absolutely having a purpose that sits and lives and breathes right in the heart of your business strategy. So I come from a comms and marketing background. Because it's something I'm passionate about and I've been driving it through the organisation. We've done an amazing engagement things through the different iterations where we had 25,000 of our employees going through workshops, ideating around reimagining. So looking at all sorts of solutions. It was brilliant, it was fun, it was driven through our millennial tier. But it stopped. We had great ideas, but nothing ever happened, nothing ever scaled, nothing ever replicated. So for this recent iteration, I worked very closely with our board chair, who was ex-Unilever, to really say, working with the heads of our business units, that actually everybody has to have a be the change strategy that dictates how they win, where they win, their M&A, the people they employ. So to me, the Purpose 2.0 has to be business strategy led.
I'm really getting a sense of the scale of your organisation and actually how seriously you take this topic. Yeah. And for you, Scott, with E.ON as well, obviously energy. Tell me about what you're doing over there.
Yeah, sure. So I think where the similarity is, so our purpose around leading the energy transition is our business strategy, right? It's baked into, it's how we make our money, right? So therefore, having purpose in what we do is almost a bit of a cheat, right? It's easy to, and that leads us to talking about sustainability and so on. But the challenge for us is, how do we broaden that now? So we've moved from being, again, go back, I said before, but a number of years ago, our money came from fossil fuels. Now it's not, right? Our growth area is to say sustainable products. So what's good is, whether you're motivated, and hopefully it's both, but motivated by saving a bit of money or saving the planet, it's the same choice commercially, right? For us, it's come and buy some solar panels, EV charger, etc. Whether you're a business, a city, or a residential customer. But that's where the whole market's moving. So the challenge for us now is, how do we evolve that? How do we keep working? So for us, on the brand side of things, is how do we take that leading the energy transition and make it more than just about the stuff? And that's the challenge is, how do you plug in progressive values that, at least most of us, if not all of us, will share in the room? How do we get across the point? Because actually, a more sustainable society in an environmental sense brings with it societal benefits as well. So that can be health in terms of clean air. It can be in terms of people at the lower end of the income scale. If you look at the cost of living crisis at the minute, energy bills are high. Energy bills will, obviously I'm talking too much. Energy bills are too high, and that's a cost problem, right? We're at the end, as it were, of that value chain. But what you can do is you can obviously deal with the cost, which is where we need government to step up and do more, than they have done. But also you can insulate people's houses better. You can change the way that they are powering their house and so on and so forth. So that societal change then leads on to lots of extra benefit for society. So that's the challenge for us around purpose is we've got a clear business goal which helps keep people focused. But again, big organisation, so that's where it is important, keeps people pointing in the right direction. But how do we now move it in a sense that we don't, quite frankly, I suppose, become a bit wishy-washy and chase our own people values, but how do we make sure that's still connected with the stuff we're trying to sell at the end of the day? Our point for being in society is to provide people with heat and light. So how do we make sure those two things add up? So
yeah,
it's really not insurmountable, but you don't want to just drift too far. So.
Yeah, it's really challenging perspective, isn't it? It's a fine line you've got to tread, and constantly keeping in touch with your customers and the market as well to see if you are operating in that fair and even way.
100%.
Yeah. And Molly, for you, I worked at Samsung for a number of years, so the whole electronic story is really interesting and really challenging as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about what's happening at Currys for you.
Yeah, I think similar to what Briony and Scott said, that element of purpose-driven marketing, to me, it's connecting your external and your internal. The way that you talk about your brand, the way you communicate your brand values, the way you speak to customers has to align with your business strategy and your core values as an organization, because consumers are smart. They will see that disconnect if it's there, and maybe we'll talk about this again later, but we know the internet never forgets. So as soon as a disconnect is spotted, people will start talking about it. So I think it's really important that you've got that connection of the external and the internal, and that it aligns with the core of your business strategy to get away from it just being a bunch of nice fluffy words on paper to something you actually do. And with some organizations, I know I mentioned Tom's, it's kind of born out of that. We know what our purpose is, this is where we start. When you have organizations that have grown up in a different way, so Currys is phenomenal in terms of how it's evolved and become this kind of master brand, moving through a lot of different organizations that have come together over the years. I think it's a lot harder actually to create a sense of purpose when you have kind of legacy cultures and legacy purposes that are all coming together into one. So when you think about tech and electronics, everyone probably has a phone in their pocket, you've got a laptop in your bag. You know people are going to buy tech. So it'd be very easy for an organization to just sell you tech and leave it at that, because you know you're going to buy it anyway. To put purpose behind that, I think, is where it becomes even more interesting and more powerful. So with Currys, you'll probably hear us talk about, or in the ads, tech for life and how to get more out of your tech. So there's a perspective at Currys, yeah, we can sell you shed loads of tech, but what if we want you to actually be able to extend the life of your tech? We'll help you repair it when it's broken. And then going above and beyond that, I think, is where it becomes interesting, both from a B2C standpoint and a B2B, is recycling your tech. What do you do with your tech when you're done with it? This room is probably sitting on a lot of unused tech in your house. So Currys set out on a mission to try to reduce the amount of tech that was going to landfill to help responsibly recycle it. So started the campaign, and now it's still running, and you'll see it. You get a little bit of an incentive to come in and drop off your tech, and we'll take that away, break down the component parts, and recycle it for you. Now, from a customer standpoint, you might say, actually, that's nice because I've just got all this stuff I didn't want to chuck in a bin. Great, here's an outlet for me. If that's the baseline, cool, let's start there. The upside of that is we're actually doing something useful and removing, landfill, removing waste from the fills, and doing something with that technology. From a business standpoint, it also becomes really important because a lot of organizations, you have goals for your company related to some sort of ESG agenda, especially if you work in public sector as well. It's one thing for you to do that for your organization, but organizations also rely on their supply chain and their network to help them achieve their own goals as well. So from a Currys business standpoint, we're out there selling tech to companies as well. If we can prove ourselves to be a partner that can help you achieve your own corporate agenda or your own purpose or mission, fantastic. We've just become a better partner to you, and we've increased our impact because we're servicing a different use case or a different need in that sense. So being able to talk to customers about that sort of, you make choices about the tech you buy, you're going to buy it anyway, but what if you could buy it in a way that has a more positive impact downstream? That's what Currys wants to do. So I think the idea of, you sell basic product, but can you sell in a way that actually has more of a positive impact? If you can, great, fantastic. And that's kind of what Currys set out to do with, managing the life of your tech.
It feels like, especially in the electronics industry, there's lots of little things we can do to incrementally change the impact we're having. I remember when I was at Samsung, obviously the television screens, the monitors that we sell, the boxes, they're huge, especially some of these. It's like, what do you do with that? Typically it goes to the recycling center, but Samsung created a way of demonstrating you could take the box and turn it into a bit of furniture for the kids to play with and use in the playroom, for example. So just finding new ways of innovating with some of the product and the packaging really starts to cut through. But I'd like to think about and share some positive examples here where we think some brands are doing some really good things, just to illustrate some examples for all of us in the room in terms of what potential North Stars could look like. For me, I was in Miami over Christmas and New Year, and I popped into a Warby Parker store just because I obviously knew about the purpose, and they didn't talk about it that much until you get to the point of sale where it's like, actually, did you know when you buy one of these, you get one and we give one as well? So just little things like that make a big difference. And on their website, they don't really shout about it. It's just how they go about doing things. It's just part of their culture and part of their DNA. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I mentioned, for those of you that were here yesterday, I mentioned on the stage, who gives a crap? I was at a retreat centre in the mountains in Wales, the Brecon Beacons, and at the centre they had these loo rolls everywhere, and they just really stood out to me. So in a place where there are no brands, who gives a crap really stood out. And I think what they're doing is obviously helping with sanitation and donating as well. And I lived in Australia at the time when they launched in 2012. And to see them go from Sydney and Melbourne all the way to a random mountain in Wales. I think it's really incredible. And what they're doing is, it's really interesting. And the way they tell the story, they tell the story in a really beautiful way so that we as humans, we can buy into it. I think that storytelling piece is so important, along with the data that they do to back it up as well. But do you guys have anyone that stands out to you?
You want to jump in?
I've got a couple of thoughts. I think it's interesting hearing reflect maybe some of the other comments about how easy it is or difficult it is to have a purpose, I suppose. So if I take two examples, something like Oddbox, which was invented to create a problem, I suppose. And I think so 40% of food produced is wasted, and 10% of greenhouse gas emissions come from that food waste. So I think that is a massive societal problem. And then you have something like Oddbox, where we know our farmers end up having to throw loads of waste, or global farmers throw loads of waste away because it doesn't fit the very strict criteria for supermarkets. And I look at something like that and I think, I really like that company, but actually what they've done is created a business like the Who Gives a Crap. In a way, they've created a business that solves a problem already. So it's purpose-driven from its conception. And then I would also funnily enough, linking to two other themes, take a Unilever brand and think about a brand that was already there, that came up with a solution that just, for me, felt amazing. And it was Dove. And I was looking back this morning, 2004, that first Dove campaign came out. And that's nearly 20 years ago. And I think that's an amazing, before Unilever talked about purpose-driven brands. And I'll never forget the first time I saw those ads that they put, or those huge billboards they put around London, which was "Real Beauty" was their tagline at the time. I think it's something like helping women develop a positive relationship with beauty or something as their line today. But I thought that was really, felt very brave at the time, to be out there showing women in all shapes and sizes when we'd only ever seen size 0 models before. So I'm increasingly, again, really admire brands who find their purpose against a product that perhaps was not invented for that reason.
Molly?
Yeah, I think again that's because I've only worked for big corporates before, so I almost like that from the challenge standpoint of figuring out your brand was built off of a different reason for being. You're known for something else, but if you have the ability to communicate with customers and you've got that kind of reach, what is your responsibility or your obligation to do more than just sell stuff and more than just be focused on profit? So again, Amazon is a name that creates a lot of associations in people's mind with what their affiliation is with purpose and planet and people and things of that sort. What I do think is really strong about Amazon is because they have the reach that they do, and because they're capturing as much data as they do, they're constantly listening to what customers are talking about. So all the reviews that people post, the way they talk about the company, what goes on social, all of that gets reviewed, and the organization can see trends and see what matters to people. So during my time with Amazon Business, when I was running that for a couple of years, we started introducing in Europe the ability to filter by sellers that had certain qualifications or certain certifications. So again, you as a consumer, you as a business buyer, you've got choice. We're putting the choice in your hand, where we can say, this seller has a certain qualification for sustainability. This supplier has a certain qualification for being a female-owned business or a minority-owned business. Great. We're going to give you that information and let you make your choices from there. So I think it's really interesting when big organizations can help enable that choice from a customer standpoint by putting it in your hands to do. And it's not saying Amazon will force anyone down a path to say you must do this or you must do that, but they've got the capability to understand what people are asking for and create a solution for them that they can opt into if they want to, but they're not forced to. So again, it's not as if Amazon now is known for being a purpose-driven organization in that way, because that would be a hard perception to change. But there are a lot of things under the covers that people don't realize that an organization of that size and scale can do. And because of their size and scale, they can compound their impact in a way that a lot of other organizations can't. So I think it's awesome when companies like Unilever, like an Amazon, that are of that size will take conscious action to drive impact and create purpose, even if it's at a small scale.
I think, just on that, I think for me, the purpose bit's almost a red herring, right? Because I think what we're talking about is good marketing. There's kind of good marketing or bad marketing. It's not whether it's purpose-driven or not purpose-driven, right? The brands we've all said, it's just good ideas executed well, which, take stuff back to, it's the fundamental role for all of us as marketing people who are working in the marketing industry, is make something interesting, make it attractive. And how you do that depends on your customer base and all the rest of it. I think the trick around, again, bringing purpose into an organisation, and the commonality through all of this is, especially those of us in bigger organisations, is a wee bit cheesy, but how do you keep the voice of the customer in the room? So again, you know, many of you will recognise this, that lots of meetings, everyone will speak from a customer perspective, but is it really your actual customers? Is it really their perspectives? Or is it, you know, the kind of silos that you have in any big business? And I think that's where the purpose bit can really help, because it can help break that conversation to, it's not just people like me, right? What is the impact on folks? So if I look at our, you know, say call wait times, right? It's about, you know, there's people obviously, first and foremost, get my problem fixed. I want to sort out what's happening with my energy. But actually, if you take a step back, it's where do the frustrations come from? You know, there's one which is it's just really annoying holding on the phone. But actually, what's a greater motivation for us trying to fix that, if you will, is, well, actually, you're trying to do something before you've got something else to do. So it's that hassle that you get. That's actually the ticket to us to streamlining that process, rather than just, can we shave? It's important, but can we take 30 seconds off a call wait time? Actually, no, can you find a different way to take that hassle out of someone's life? Are you going to pick the kids up at school? Are you going somewhere else? So it's the voice of the customer bit that I think is important, but otherwise it's just make what you're doing interesting, right? Because otherwise we're all competing. There's great, but you know, Patagonia are Patagonia, and we all talk about them in reverential terms, because what they do is they execute it really well. It's not that there aren't organisations or brands trying to do what they do, they've just nailed it, which is great. But again, it's good marketing.
Yeah, I mean, they're good marketing, absolutely. And I'm going to challenge you a little bit. With positive intent, of course. Who do you think isn't doing it very well? Who do you think isn't, you know, delivering on the promise?
Well, I think, look, it's the classic one is if you go to the Pepsi commercial where it, you know, went wrong, well-intentioned, but it's not built on anything, right? And that was the challenge with it. If Pepsi were an organisation that had stood up, you know, to discrimination and hate in the way that they had claimed to do, you know, one, it was a bad ad as well, right? But it was, you know, the intention was, you can only assume it's good. And again, big organisations totally can see how it happened. The other one, remember back, was it not the World Cup just gone, one before, maybe, or the Euros or whatever, but I think Mastercard, and if it wasn't Mastercard, I'm sorry, but for calling them out, there was I'm sure it was Mastercard. They did a competition that was basically for every goal that was scored, they were donating meals for people. And again, really well intentioned. You could see how people sat in a meeting and went, wouldn't it be brilliant, right? There's a moment in a football match, we're connected with football, that's the joy. We take the consumer, but we really spread that joy by helping it. But obviously what happened was it became oh shit, someone missed a penalty, so there's going to be a kid starving somewhere tonight because we're not donating a meal. Well-intentioned, what they should have done is have the programme rolling and tell people about the programme and do it that way. And I think when you start trying to tie, again, no matter how well-meaning, but a societal benefit to a win or a lose situation, that's where it can go wrong. And that the jeopardy is just, it's beyond marketing at that point. Do a thing because it's right, the right thing to do, and it's done for the right intention. And it probably comes back to where we all started, which is people can smell when it's not right type thing.
And exactly where we all started on this, that if your marketing, your purpose-driven marketing doesn't align with your business strategy and what your business actually does, then it's a weird disconnect that customers pick up on immediately. So in that case, MasterCard isn't known for doing that. Great intentions if they did, but at the same time, your campaign doesn't align with what your brand is known for or what it stands for. So it just feels odd, and you kind of get one of those head tips at the, you know, least bad scenario, and the worst scenario customer looks at that and says, I've lost trust in your brand, that's foolish. So it has to, again, your communications externally have to align with what you stand for internally as well.
I've got a complicated one.
Okay.
But it's an interesting one. So has anyone heard of Tony's Chocolonely?
Yes.
So I don't know if you know their line. So their line is 100% slave-free chocolate, which is, I was trying to keep this simple because it's quite a complicated topic, but probably most of you read that and thought, well, I wouldn't connect slavery to chocolate anyway. I mean, that's a strange, that is how they've launched their brand. Very brave. And obviously chocolate's something I know quite a lot about. Cocoa's one of our biggest products, and there is slavery in the cocoa supply chain, and it is a real problem, and there is child slavery in the cocoa supply chain. So they've set a brand up to solve a problem that probably most consumers didn't know about anyway. They set up a brand that put the most enormous target on their head, because what investigative journalist worth their salt is not going to go and bloody well find a slave in their supply chain if it kills them. So there's also a difference between child slavery and child labour. So I don't know how many of you, when you were kids, did newspaper rounds, or if you lived in a rural area, you were probably helping on your parents' farm in the summer holidays. And that's not child slavery. But guess what? Your parents run a business, and my father was a printer. In the holidays, I used to go in and fold and stuff envelopes for him. So was that child labour? I don't think that was child labour. I think I just helped my family business out. So there's kids helping their families. There is a problem with forced child labour. There is a problem with slavery. But yes, guess what? The Times did find 1,700 child labourers in the supply chain, and it kicked up into this huge shitstorm, if I'm allowed to say this, for Tony's Chocolonely. And then that takes me back to the beginning again, where I don't know if anyone read my LinkedIn post about, I'm sure you didn't, about coming here today, which is a piece around let's die trying. So yeah, with us as a room of marketeers, I really want to talk about, maybe I would have said this at the end, but I'm going to say it now. And I was talking about it at dinner last night on the circuit. I can see Eleanor sitting in the front. Those that were on our table will know what I'm talking about. We were talking about it at dinner last night, and I was talking about, I'm old enough to remember a commercial world with no purpose, where there was no ESG and no sustainability, where business really was bad. It was all about shareholder supremacy. It was about making as much profit as you could. And I vote for this world, please. I'd rather be living in the world that we live in now and have a few companies getting it wrong and trying and die trying, and I'll be the marketeer that will die trying, and will drag an organisation with me to do the best they can with the best intent. But anybody who works in any emerging, we work in 70 countries in the most challenging geographies in the world, 5 million small-scale farmers that have 1 hectare of land each. And that is a real challenge. And anybody with a phone is an investigative journalist now. Everybody's out to pull the big corporates down. I'd like us as a community to say, how can we change that mindset where you get attacked for doing the right, with genuine intent, trying to do the right thing? I'm going to say one other contrast is something like Walmart, who have their climate plan, which looks all very shiny on paper, but doesn't bear in mind 95% of their emissions come from their value chain. Now, that's not good intent. But I'd buy a Tony's Chocolonely who's trying to solve a problem over a corporate who's out there making claims that just don't even make sense. So some still don't make sense. But I do believe in corporates more than government to solve systemic global problems in today's world.
And just,
thank
you. But on that point, I think, think about Tony's Chocolonely, there was the Advent calendar one as well, right, where they just, I think got the tone slightly wrong. But like you're saying, I think consumers still work out the intention and the commitment behind it versus if it had been, again, the Walmart end of the scale. Someone, I suppose, essentially trying to pull the wool over, people's eyes over stuff. And I think that's, for us as an organisation, we're obviously, energy sector has always been and continues to be highly scrutinised, and rightly so, from the PM everyone down. So that continues. But again, and we have conversations internally. I've always been, and stay on the side that we're going to get criticised for something. So it doesn't mean you don't do anything. And sometimes we can face challenges, marketeers in the organisation going, better just keep our heads down. We'll just get on with it. It'll be fine. Whereas actually, I'd rather we do something, might get it slightly wrong, but actually, as long as we know what we're doing is the right thing and get there, because you can find stuff about us. Some of it's true, some of it's not. But I say I'd rather, we try to push, as you were saying, our agenda forward, because consumers work it out in the end.
It's a humility, it's a tone of voice thing too, isn't it? We're learning, we're trying. It's not standing up there and promoting yourself as the best.
We have about 5 minutes left, if I'm looking at that clock correctly. And I want to make sure we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. But before we do that, I want to talk about measurement, because obviously becoming purpose-driven or instilling purpose-driven activities in our business requires that investment. We need to see an ROI from it as well. Molly, from your perspective, how are you guys handling that at Currys?
I don't know if we do it very well, to be honest. I find it really difficult to connect purpose and metrics. So I guess my starting point always would be, what are the metrics that matter to your organization? For if you're a publicly listed company, you do have an obligation to your shareholders. You're going to focus on profit. So if I know for Currys, we care about profit, but we also care about our net promoter score. We care about customers coming into our stores and things of that sort. So I can't directly create a causal relationship between purpose-driven marketing and some of our metrics that matter. However, it can be indicative, and we can track that voice of customer feedback, and that's something that we talk a lot about at Curry's business, as we did at Amazon, which is constantly monitoring that feedback from your customer. So I think it's hard for me, at least, to put a metric against that, because is it good purpose-driven marketing, or is it just good business? Not sure how to separate the two of those. So I would always just start with what the core metrics that matter are to my business, and then try to layer on what I can, which is more of that subjective customer voice, because you can be sure Pepsi got loads of voice of a customer feedback after the Kendall Jenner ad, that they can look at that and say, yeah, objectively that didn't work for us because of the brand perception off of it. But yeah, that was one that when I saw that question, I was thinking, I love metrics, I want to connect everything. I don't know how to do this one, actually. So I guess it's, for me, it's proxies more than it is a magic metric that I can directly connect to it. But I'd be interested in getting somebody else's feedback on that.
Yeah, we're probably not dissimilar. I think, you know, I suppose the number in the bottom right's got to be, you know, the most important one. But ultimately, you know, the risk of repeating myself, for us, it's the key marketing metrics. So for us, it's that, you know, we've got decent awareness, always want to build it. There's only so much we can do on where we're at with our budgets, if my CFO's listening. But consideration I can shift, and that doesn't take, you know, me having, you know, increasingly mass spend. That's better ideas executed better, and that's the cut through. What we do find, again, when the risk actually of trying, I have found, trying to get too deep into is our, you know, purpose stuff really cutting through, is either, you know, in a focus group, we all know it, and it's, again, it's good insight is good, but the risk is people go, yeah, I'm really interested in that. No, you're not. Not from your energy supplier. You want to know, what do I owe? How do I pay it? Thanks very much, I'm out the door. But in those confined situations, there is that, you know, because again, around sustainability and climate crisis, we all know what we should say, maybe slightly different from how we actually are. So, but what we can see is if we're committed to it, we know it's the right thing, it's the only path for us. So therefore, actually, is our consideration going up? Is our cut through increasing? That's where we know, because again, it comes back to our purpose is about trying to resonate with our audiences, whether that's at the business end or cities or residential customers.
Yeah.
So it's that cut through is probably how we best try and track. But again, is our marketing working is the bigger and
Absolutely.
more important question.
It's like an econometrics play where you look at all the different levers that you have in your marketing modeling mix, and you know that there's certain flags in there around the purpose activities, and you can see from that perspective what the outcomes are. Yeah. And you can even start to model some of the things there too.
We don't try and measure it. We believe it's
Fair
the right
enough.
thing to do.
Yep.
Full stop.
And that's just the blanket. There you go.
Yeah.
Do we even need to measure it?
Yeah.
Because we know.
I do have a personal one with
confidence.
employee engagement though. For my own self, I think that the employee engagement's massive, and I run the employee brief. So my personal one is employee engagement around it, but we don't look to measure our purpose.
We have literally 1 minute left. So if there are any questions in the audience, please hold them. We're going to be floating around all day today. So yeah, please come and have a chat to us. But yeah, thank you to all of you for entertaining the brevity of my questions. And thank you all for listening.